Bit of a Monte Carlo-ish rally vibe to this place, isn't there? Snow by the side of the road, little damp, twisting hairpins, which is appropriate because you join me inside the new Alpine A110. It is the rebirth of the Alpine brand. The car that won the first ever World Rally Championship in the early 70s, the original A110. And the guy who created the company, he said, right, what I really want to do is make a small sports car that's fun to drive on twisting, mountainous alpine roads. Hence he called it Alpine, because he was French. And then after the A110, they made a few other cars, culminating in the A610, and in the early 90s, I don't know, people stopped buying them. It's owned by Renault by that point, and Alpine died. Now, it is back, which is brilliant news. I've been really excited about this car for a long time because it is in the greatest Alpine tradition. Small, light. This is a 250 horsepower car with a 1.8 litre engine behind me, driving the rear wheels. It has an all aluminium structure, so it weighs less than 1,100 kilos. That is light. You think a Toyota GT86 is light. This is lighter by another 100 and a bit kilos. Oh, brilliant. There's lots to tell you about. So we're going to go to a circuit, do some laps. I think they've got a bare chassis there, which will be interesting to look at. And then we'll come back out onto the road, find out a bit more, tell you what it's like. Okay, so welcome to a circuit. It's a tight circuit, a small circuit, in places a little bit of a wet circuit, in a tiny mid-engine sports car. But oh, that feeling of agility and that feeling you get on the road where things breathe easily just seems to be replicated here. It turns with such clarity and speed. Oh, wow, it's delicate. Steering's light. I've got it in track mode, which firms up the steering, but it still remains quite light. It really still falls into a little slide. And when I know it's damp, I know it's cold. Really, really easily, really controllably, naturally. It gives you loads of confidence. There's still not loads of steering feel, even though it's weighted up a bit. All right, ESC deactivate. What a really lovely, agile feeling thing. I think it's got a bit more sort of immediacy on turn-in than, say, a front-engine car like a Toyota GT86. As well it might, because of where the engine is. I mean, in a way, I mean this as a compliment, there are sort of McLaren-esque feelings to the way it pivots around its middle. Do you know what I mean? It just has that delicate, even balance to it. Doesn't feel like it's a hugely stable car in a high-speed corner. You wouldn't want to be halfway around a big high-speed corner and then lift, I don't think. It's just got a really nice natural balance to it, actually. It makes a cool little noise, doesn't it? I don't know if you can hear it as well as I can, and it crackles a bit and pops on the overrun. Does not sound this good in a Clio. Tell you what, this gearbox is pretty good, actually, when it comes to just being sort of quick upshifts. Steers really nicely. There, the shift is a bit slow. When you run up to the limiter, and it runs up pretty quickly to that limiter, it's better than it is in a Clio. But one, I don't think you miss a limited slip differential. I think that's fine, certainly in these conditions, because it's not a car with so much power that it really feels like it needs it. Just what a delicate, adjustable, just a gorgeous car to drive. Bloody hell. This might be my favourite car this year. It's one of my favourite cars of the last, I don't know how long. I feel excited about this in a way I feel about a GT86 actually, but more so about this, I think, because it's got a bit of extra poke. It's even lighter. Right, wouldn't always do this, but this is quite special. This, you probably hear the cars go past in the background. This is quite a special platform, so I think it's worth talking about in a bit more detail, because it's compact, it's narrow, it's 1800 millimeters wide, and that's quite hard to do when you've got bespoke double wishbone suspension, which is quite wide. You've got a transverse engine, which is quite wide. It's just difficult, especially when you're working in aluminium. This is an all aluminium body. It's got mostly extruded bits. It's got some cast bits down at the back, and it's mostly bonded together and riveted together. There are bits at the back, because that's where the engine is, that's where the heat is, that are welded. Carbon fiber's too expensive at this level. Steel is too heavy at this level, so you end up with aluminium. But that's difficult because you want the weight distribution to be right bang in the middle, so it's 44.56, which means the fuel tank has to be at the front. So there's a few difficulties with putting a fuel tank at the front. One, you've got double wishbone suspension, which is quite wide, and putting the fuel tank between it means you've got to get 45 litres of fuel tank into not a very big space. Two, putting a fuel tank this close to the crash structure brings with it its own problems when it comes to integrity, because you don't want, well, an exploding fuel tank, do you? But everywhere you look, there's just little attention to detail to just shave out every single kilogram out of this car. Yet still the torsional rigidity is about 22,000 newton meters per degree, which in a car of this weight and the loads it's got should be absolutely fine. Anyway, I thought you should see it because it's a packaging marvel. Okay, so it's great on a circuit. It's really interesting under the skin. What's it like out on the road? You know what? It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I cannot begin to tell you how much I like this car. Oh God, there's so much to tell you. It's an 1100 kilogram car, and so much work has gone into doing that. You know, things like the rear brake calipers have got the parking brake mechanism integrated into them. So rather than having a separate caliper, it just is integrated into the main caliper. That saves about 2.5 kilos, and they've just gone through systematically, reducing weight. They don't want adaptive dampers. There was never the thought of adaptive dampers, because adaptive dampers weigh a bit more, because the dampers are heavier, and then you have to have the actuator, which is heavier, and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. So if you don't have them, you save yourself a few kilos. So the springs are relatively soft. Anti-roll bars are hollow and not too soft, because you don't have loads of weight to manage. And that means that even on what are really actually quite tough roads around the south of France, because you know they're badly rutted, they're small, they run between tree roots and stuff like that. They're a bit like some UK roads in a way in their poorness. The surface is really bad, yet this car breathes really easily in its ride quality. It just has a suppleness to it. Yes, it's well controlled. I guess, yeah, you might call it firmly damped, but it's not harsh, it is not rigid, it is just, it's pitched where it needs to be. Steering is light, just a little bit more than 2 turns lock to lock. You get loads of feedback. Actually, ultimately, you get decent feedback on a circuit. Do you get enough on the road? Well, maybe I'm expecting a Porsche 718 Cayman kind of rack, which is really positive. This is good. Not sure it's the total last word in steering feel. If you're comparing it to, say, the old Megane Renault Sport, you know, that had a steering system to die for. This isn't quite there, but you know what? It's fine. It's good enough. Also fine, good enough is the engine. Actually, you know, it's a bit better than fine, actually. There's a little rasp from the exhaust of this 1.8 litre unit. You get this sort of the odd whoosh and zing. Because it's a turbo, it doesn't rev that high. It revs to about 6.5. You need that exhaust note because the actual whininess of the engine itself isn't that endearing, but with the little turbo whooshes and the exhaust, it's quite a nice noise. The 7-speed DCT dual clutch transmission. So they had 2 choices when it came to making the gearbox. They said, well, we could do a manual gearbox as well, but we don't have the budget to do a manual gearbox and the DCT brilliantly. So they've taken the DCT, which usually runs dry clutches on the Clio, and they've introduced a wet clutch to it. That means the progression is much better. It's a more refined unit, it's a more responsive unit. And it's good, but it's weird. It's when you lift off, that's when it's fine going up, it shifts up quickly enough. When you just lift off, it sort of feels like it goes into almost like a slightly coasting sort of mode. If you were comparing that to the motor and gearbox in a Porsche 718 Cayman, say maybe the Porsche has a bit less turbo lag. I think this runs it close enough for the sound quality, but the Porsche's gearbox is, I think, a level above. I think the Porsche's steering is probably a level above too, and in terms of interior quality, we'll have a look around in here. It's fine because it's an 1100 kilogram car, and I think that's a really key thing to remember when you look at some of the plastics and some of the brittleness, is that, oh, they're good. Look, don't get me wrong, they're good. They're well presented, they're nicely put together. But if you were sort of, you know, tapping things and thinking, right, how thick is that piece of material? Well, bear in mind, it isn't that thick, because this is a sub 1100 kilogram car. All right, that's the thing you have to bear in mind. I am happy to accept those compromises. I think you should be happy to accept those compromises too. I'm so excited about this car. It epitomises all that a sports car in the 21st century ought to be. Lose the mass and you gain so much. You gain so much. I'm having more fun in this car on this road than I would have in any supercar whatsoever, because they're heavier, they're so much faster. You have to be driving the absolute pants off them to get the best out of them, to get close to their limits. This has got limits that's that bit more approachable. It moves with such agility. It rides with such deftness. And oh God, I just love it to bits. Alpine's got a lot of work to do to build its profile back, because it doesn't mean much to people in the UK. It doesn't mean much to actually most of the wider world beyond Dieppe, frankly. But God, it's brilliant. If all Alpines in future follow this philosophy, then I would love to think that in 15, 20 years' time we look back and go, this is a car that started something really, really special.